I'm taking the BackupAssist ER challenge, and the first recovery is the VM Instant Boot. This means taking your backup and booting it as a Hyper-V guest, great for instant recovery in emergency situations. So I have a fresh install of Windows 10 on this NUC, as well as my backup disk, and the challenge is to get running as fast as possible. So let's do it! So we're ready to go. I have a remote desktop session to the Intel NUC, which is going to be my Hyper-V host. There's nothing really special about this machine. It's just fresh install of Windows 10. It does have 8 gigs of memory, but it is a very basic i3 machine. I've also connected the backup disk to the computer via USB, and it shows up as the D drive here. Now, the first thing I need to do is to run command prompt. And let's start the stopwatch now. So I'm running command prompt, and I'm going to navigate to the backup disk. The backup is stored under here, and if I do a dir, you can see there's a directory called Instant Boot that's actually created on the backup disk, as well as the backup of my Surface itself. So if I were to go into Linus Surface and just do a directory listing, you'll see that the backup VHDX files are listed right there. So what I'm going to do instead is to go into the Instant Boot directory. And here we have an executable called VM Instant Boot. Now, what this does is it essentially makes the backup bootable. Now, by default, the backup is not bootable in that it is just a pure image of the original hard disk. In order to get it to boot into Hyper-V, we do need to make that bootable, and I'll explain what that is a bit later. But first of all, this tool here. The first thing we want to do is just to make sure that this tool can see the backups. So I'm going to use the -L option, and okay, so it has detected that there is one backup on that disk, which is obviously the one I took earlier. Now, what we need to do is to use this -I option to take the VHDX and make it bootable. So I'll go VM Instant Boot -I, and I have to pass in the identifier, which is that one there. So if I have more than one backup, in other words, historical backups, I could have chosen a different identifier to boot at a different point in time. But I've only got one, so I'll use that one there. Now, what this is doing is creating a differencing VHDX file and then applying changes to that differencing disk. So all the things we need to do to slightly tweak the virtual hard disk in order to get it bootable in Hyper-V, it's done into the differencing disk. And what that means is that we don't touch the original disk at all. The backup is preserved. So the next thing I have to do is to start Hyper-V Manager and create believe it or not, create a Hyper-V guest, and then boot that backup. So let's get started here. I'll call this the ER challenge recovery. We want it to be a generation 2. Now, my Surface had 4 gig of RAM to start with, so I'll keep that the same. Networking, I'll just use the default switch. And okay, this is where I have to specify I want to use an existing hard disk, and then I want to go navigate to the directory listed here. So this is D drive, BackupAssist, backups, Instant Boot, and then there's only one directory there, and I want to use that VHDX. Okay. Next, everything looks good. Let's go finish. Right. So I can then connect to that machine and start it up. Now, because this is booting for the first time and there are obviously hardware differences between the old Surface and a Hyper-V guest, this may have to reboot 1 or 2 times. So let's see how we go. But in theory, at least, I should get a login screen. Oh, and indeed, I do have a login screen. So let's log in Yes, I got the password right. Okay, so it needs to restart. Well, that's no challenge because, that's no surprise because it probably detected some hardware changes, and obviously Windows needs to update and do whatever black magic it does underneath the hood. Now, this recovery scenario is superb when we need to get a machine running instantly and we don't have a lot of time to waste by doing a full server reimage. So it's great for that emergency situation where you need to respond and get everyone running instantly. Now I'm logging in here. With a bit of luck, I'll get my desktop. And did I mention that it was a very basic machine? Perhaps that's what you get for an i3 processor. Okay, so it's detecting. I'm going to skip that. And voila, we are back. No, I don't want to do that. And we are back. So let's just make sure that we've got internet connectivity. Okay, excellent. So we're back to google.com, and we've shown that it's possible to instant boot from backup into a new Hyper-V guest. Challenge successful.